Hey bud, how you doing? Doing well? We got a video to do. You ready to go? Let's do that. I'm gonna put you down here real quick and we'll start. Put you down there, we go. Hi everybody, Father Bill Holtinger here, and this is your Friday Reflection. Well, often in my Friday Reflections, I talk about something about theology or ecclesiology, big words, or things that are going on in the church, lots of stuff going on. But you know, I want to share just something a little bit more personal, and that's about Snickers. Kind of an update on Snickers and what breed is he really? Here's some backstory. When I first got him, I was told he was a poodle mix. Oh, good. That's what I wanted. A poodle will have its attention drawn to me. It won't be distracted like a terrier would be. So, great. When I first got him, though, the paperwork said he was a poodle schnauzer mix. A poodle schnauzer. That means he's a schnoodle. Now, okay, that's great. He kind of has the ears of a. It's kind of the ears of a schnauzer, and we almost called him Yoda because of his ears that flop back, right? Flip back. Anyway, but we went with Snickers, and this is how it came to be. It had to deal with the breed. So, what is a schnauzer poodle but a schnoodle? And what rhymes with schnoodle? Well, that would be snickerdoodle. And of course, snickerdoodle is the color of Snickers, in this case, this dog, right? So that would be perfect, but I can't use the whole word because the term or the phrase doodle is actually the phrase I use to tell my dogs when I've had them to go to the bathroom. So I might say, go doodle, and they know what to do. Not go potty, not anything else. Doodle. So we just dropped that off. I was talking to Erica when we were pondering on this. She was a big help for this decision. And we said, well, just drop that part off. And his name then is Snickers. And sometimes people call him Snicks. But sometimes we'll just say his full name is Snickerdoodle. But when I want him to do something, I'll say, hey, Snickers, doodle. And he knows exactly what I want. So, he's a schnoodle, and that was great, except for there's two things that I was just confused about. So what I decided to do was a DNA test that would conclusively give me information about what makes up this dog, because he sheds and not heavily again, has a curly tail. These are things that are not poodle-like as far as I understand. And so I went to the veterinarian and they said, well, we don't do DNA tests anymore, but we can recommend a place. And they sent me to a place called Wisdom Panel. It was online. It was a place then I could purchase this thing. It was like $90 and 10% discount coupon since it was the first time. And so I then sent off for that. A couple weeks later, I got this test where I had to use not a cotton swab, but a swab that had like brushes on the edge. And I needed to swirl it in his little mouth there for 15 seconds, which was kind of tricky because you can imagine you want like a brush all over. We know where to brush our teeth, but dogs don't like that. And this wasn't even a toothbrush. It was just a round little mesh instead of a Q-tip and went in there. But anyhow, so I sent it off and I got the response and I was not expecting this. In fact, I was saying to myself, okay, now I'm about to get the response and I'm expecting it to be poodle, schnauzer, and whatever else. I used to call it a shed-a-doodle out there. I don't know what it is, or what's going on with the tail, that kind of thing. So here's the results. You ready? Right here. Take a look at this. Snickers is 70% poodle, a toy and miniature together. 2% Bichon Frise and 1% Pekingese. And that's the type of dog that these dogs like to be with their owners. They like to watch what they're doing and follow them and all those kind of things. And that's what I was looking for, really, is that's why I chose a poodle mix in the beginning. The other part, as you see here, is 11% Chihuahua and 10% Yorkshire Terrier. That I was not expecting at all. I'm not like, what in the world? Because like he's got schnauzer ears and whatever. Anyhow, so moving on. And then that's called the terrier part. And I think terriers are terrierists. I used to have a fox terrier, and that dog was truly a terrierist. It knew how to escape. It knew how to escape out of the house, like by how to open the door. It would also then steal cookies. If I had cookies on the countertop in the kitchen, the dog was so smart. It knew how to jump up where the sink was, put his forearms in there, and then drag himself up and get all over, then have free reign of the kitchen countertops. I'm like, oh my gosh. never again. And so I said, I'll never get a terrier again. Well, guess what? Snickers, you are a terrier. A poodle terrier, but mostly poodle. Yeah, I know. Let's get you down, bud, so I can chat. So, that's what's going on. I'm like, oh my goodness. What? So what then is he? So we know the data. So I thought, what? Well, he's not a schnoodle anymore. So what is he? So maybe he's I came up with these names. So maybe he's a mutt doodle, or a muddadoodle, mutt doodle, or maybe he's a Chiyorky poo, or a Chiyork poo. I don't know. What do you think? What would you say? Because that's the dominant. Poodle, Chihuahua, and Yorkshire are the dominant characteristics. By the way, the other ones that you saw in there were 4% Cocker Spaniel, American Cocker Spaniel. That I didn't expect, but that makes sense because that's also where there can be shedding, right? And also with the Chihuahua and the Yorkshire Terrier. But also 2%, not just poodle, but medium or standard. So, okay. But where did all this come from? So, there was a nice tree of how the dog came to be, how the breeds must have interbred to get to where you get to Snickers. Like, okay, but then I went to ChatGPT and I said, you know what? What's the deal with the curly hair? So I gave ChatGPT these results, and also about the shedding. So here's what I learned, and this is what ChatGPT said. And again, take it with some grain of salt because while ChatGPT is helpful in a lot of things, sometimes it doesn't feed you all the data. So if you know more about this, if you're a veterinarian, please let me know. But the curly tail, the plumed style, so like Snickers has a plume style hair, so I reach him up here. His tail, it actually crops straight up typically, and it curls, but not really tightly. So they call this a curly or plume style tail. This is mostly explained by, and get a load of this is not what I was expecting, the poodle. The toy miniature poodle, the 70% poodle. Poodle says here, poodles often carry a high-set tail, as I mentioned, it kind of sticks straight up, that naturally curves upward, especially in smaller sizes. He's a smaller size. When mixed with other small companion breeds, that curve can become more profound or pronounced and even more fully curled. Bichon Frise also is to have a play in this, the 2%. Even though it's a small percentage, Bichons are famous for their curled tail carried over the back. And this trait can show up disproportionately in mixes. And then the 1%, the Pekingese, that's 1%, tiny percentage, but worth noting, ChatGPT says. Pekingese have a very different, distinct curled tail over the back, and that gene is dominant enough that it can even influence tail carriage. Wow. Okay, so there it is. I kept thinking, oh, it must be, possibly that the Schnauzer has curled tails. I know they also have a tail that kind of sticks up, but maybe they crop it. They do this also with some poodles. Maybe they're cropping it for whatever reason. And anyhow, it's none of that. Okay, so let's move on to the light shedding. Again, ChatGPT says there is a clear source for this. Do you want to lay down a bit? Okay, you can lay down. There we go. And here we go. It's the poodle again. It says the poodle, the miniature, the toy, and the standard, 72%. You put those together, that's 72% of his breed. They say this, poodles have hair, not fur, which grows continuously and sheds very little. This is a dominant factor in your dog's coat behavior. True enough. But it also says Bichon Frise, also a low-shedding hair type coat and often used in hypoallergenic mixes for exactly this reason. I've had a Poodle Bichon before, and I guess he's also a Poodle Bichon, but the very little bit of the Frijon there, or the Bichon there. Other breeds in the mix, Chihuahua, Yorkshire Terrier, American Cocker Spaniel, do shed more, but they're outweighed genetically and practically by the Poodle Bichon side. So, bottom line, your dog, this ChatGPT says, your dog, it sheds light, its light shedding comes from overwhelmingly from the Poodle genes, with Bichon Frise reinforcing it. That is not what I was expecting either. So putting it all together, it says, for ranking contributors by trait, the curly tail is Poodle, which is major, Bichon, which is and reinforcing on Pekingese, which is minor but does have a play. And light shedding is the poodle dominant and the Bichon. I'm like, wow. Okay, well, so Snickers, you are not a schnoodle. The question is, what do we call you? Folks, I'd like to invite you, if you will, to consider, help me out with, what is he? What is his breed? I mentioned earlier some ideas for breed, but I don't know exactly. So, again, I thought, well, okay, maybe he's this, you see somebody outside. That terrier is, and there it is. It's right there. We see it right there. What could it be? How about this? Again, I mentioned this. It could be a muddadoodle, or a muddoodle, or maybe a Yorkie, or a Chi Yorkie poo, or what might it be? What might he be? Well, let me know if you want to. If you're seeing this on Facebook, put it in the comments. If you come to Mass this weekend, let me know. We'd be curious to know. You ready to go, bud? You done? Okay. Oh, there he goes. Folks, I'm going to be preaching this weekend. I'd ask that you would pray for me, as I always do, because, hey, you know, I'm trying to produce a homily that you need to hear. Now, that's not a homily that I need to make. It's a homily that you need to hear. That's my question I often ask in our preparation on Wednesday for these homilies. And what is it that we need to hear? So I'm going to be keying off of the gospel, and I want you to pre-read that, take a look at that, and you'll be more ready to kind of hear some of the things. Also connected to the first reading. By the way, these two go together quite often, and that's kind of how they pair these up liturgically. They choose the gospel and they pair a First Testament reading with it. And that is going to be where I'm going. I won't tell you much more, so you have to come to Mass and listen. But I'd ask you to pray so that hearts will be open to be able to hear what it is that people need to hear. Often I know sometimes I say something or preaching happens because the homily is a very special point of the homily, and I believe it's got the Holy Spirit active going on in there. And we may say things that you will pick up, but later tell us, like when you said XYZ, that really impacted me, and we didn't say XYZ. Deacon Brad, Father Dominic, myself, neither. We didn't say anything like that, but you needed to hear that. That's the Holy Spirit likely connecting with you, with kind of that milieu that within what you sit in your life. So I'll look forward to seeing you this weekend. Let me know what you think of a Snickers and what breed he might be, and pray for me for the homily. God bless you all. Bye-bye.